Welcome to the podcast of School Beyond Limitations. In this podcast, you will learn how to guide your child through their school life with the intention to help them find their unique essence that will allow your daughter, your son to live a fulfilled and meaningful life.
Hello everyone, welcome to another podcast. Today we have again Martina Geromin and myself, Nayeef, and we will be talking about the parental involvement in education as a whole, how important it is in every aspect of life, and how we all are stakeholders for quality education and to move forward. So Martina, would you like to start?
Yes, I think already in the past we talked about the importance of working together, right? I mean, if there is a collaboration, a strong collaboration between parents and school, then this has an impact also on the student. And I think education is just an all-embracing task for everyone. And we talked in the past also about, one of those African quotes that says it takes an entire village to educate a human being. And I think that's so true. It really takes people around the young human beings that creates a space around a human being where there's a framework and where the human being sees, I'm taken care of. I have people that I can follow. I have role models. They know they have more experience. And in the ideal situation, of course, when school and parents have the same outlook, for their child. And I think the question at the end of the day is, what do I want for my child to happen in their lives? What is my main goal? What is my main purpose as a parent? What is my main purpose as school? Because at the beginning of their lives, children are dependent on human beings. They are independent on their caretakers, right? I mean, whoever takes care of the children will have an impact on the children. We can't negate that. And when we, so to speak, send our children to school, then of course the school has an impact on the students. But we need to be aware that the majority, we say, out of studies, about 85% of the influence comes from the family until children are teenagers. And then when they are teenagers, it will be replaced by friends. And only 10 to 15% or 20% is the school. And, so we need to be aware of that. If then the two entities work together, based on a similar outlook, and as I mentioned before, we need to understand what is our aim. Is it that my child goes to school? Is it that my child lives a life that they can take into their hands by themselves, that they can always find solutions, that they are, strong citizens and can face anything and can then really, establish those skills that allow them to live a fulfilled life, a meaningful life? Is this what I aim for my child to happen? Or is education maybe just a side effect, or I'm not thinking about it, or I'm not really concentrated on that? We at SBL, we say, education is the power as such, because education will basically shape a human being. Education is one of the most important things ever to happen, and of course education is not just in school and at home. Education is everywhere. Education is society. Education, if I'm open towards that. So I think we need to ask ourselves the question, what do we want for our child to happen? Are we also in agreement that education is fundamental? Are we also in agreement that it takes a long time, and that it takes many people to educate my child, but that in the first place, it is my own, especially parents' duty to ensure that my children can experience something that they can, approach life in a way that they feel, oh, there is meaning out there. There's meaning within me. I see myself as an important additional part of this society, and I can bring this to society. I bring meaning to society as well. And Nayeef, you are young, right? And I think out of your age, I would also like to ask you, what is education for you? And how did you experience education yourself in this kind of triad, parents, school, and student? And give us your point of view on that.
Following up your comments, it is true that up to a certain stage in life, we are dependent on our parents. And after the dependency slowly fades, so we tend to learn, on our own and from our surroundings. It does impact a lot and it impacts heavily, which is why having a great circle is always mandatory for you to, constantly push forward and become better. And honestly, for this, it takes like-minded people to come together, and a space is very necessary for this. And SBL is offering exactly that. Education in school, as you said, only 10 to 15% gets taught by the school from the school. I mean, a school doesn't, it isn't just an entity that's there standing. A school is everything around it and within it. So it's the people, it's the facilitators, the parents, it's the students, and everyone, right? And I think, of course, a school's ideology, a school's vision is very important because that keeps the environment alive. But then again, at the end of the day, it's on to the people, the facilitators, the peers that you're going to have around you who actually, influence this, or you somehow, because you're communicating with them, develop a mindset which is very, like-minded. And it is important to have that space always. But then again, talking about dependency, I think it's also very important that we also can rely onto someone, right? And as we grow older, as teenagers grow older, it's very noticeable, especially in the past few decades, that we tend to distance ourselves from everyone that we grew up with or we were raised by, right? Including parents, including our old, maybe friends, and including our old relatives or something like that. And it's because we are exploring something new and experiencing something new. So it's hard for us to, be stuck in the past. And the problem is that I feel like that, there's very less involvement of togetherness, of working together. And I think if there's an environment which can be created, a space where it's not just the schools or the new friends or the old friends or the parents or the family members. It's not like every single entities they work together onto something. I think then the bond becomes not only stronger, but also it creates something where, that individual can string everything out and work with everyone. It doesn't have to be, oh, I work on this with that specific friend circle because that friend circle is not for this. Instead they could just, work together and see where they fit the best. And this is also adaptability. Whenever we explore a new culture or a new, we experience something new, we don't have to always leave the, past or things we've done before. We can always take things and elements from it to move forward with. And I think this can only be done, as I said, if there are like-minded people. And honestly, talking about SBL is not for everyone, right? We talked about this in the past. It's only for those who are motivated to learn, who shares as equal values as SBL offers, right? And because everyone is in alignment with the values of SBL, this makes the place much more powerful because no one is against what it has to say in terms of values. Of course, within the values, we have uniqueness and we have, we embrace the differences. And this is what makes this place even more beautiful because then you have people of all mindsets coming together, but they have one common value. And yeah, why not? Why not parents gets involved into this? And they are, as Bill constantly, reminds people, even I think in our past episodes, we mentioned why not parents are get involved? And then it's a part of as Bill value that parents are taking part and being a part of the child's education. And you did mention that it's everyone's a stakeholder for an individual's education. And that can only happen if we have the true sense of education. Education is not like just the academics we do, or we learn, or we read. Education is everything around us. I see something and I want to know more about it. I go to a shopkeeper and I want to ask about the product. Now that is a sense of education as well because they're informing me about the product, where it was made, how it was, probably weaved, and this is exactly it. And you pass it on to people. And yeah, we just have to change the perspective of how we see education. And let's not divide the people because there's too many division. Like we divide everything out. I mean, rather we should focus on best utilizing this unity and yeah, finding spaces and platforms like SBL, which brings everyone together.
And Naeem, you mentioned something important here, and that's the word engagement, right? It's not for everyone, but I'm also a firm believer that things can be learned, and engagement can also be learned. And that's why the collaboration between school and parents is so important, because collaboration starts also by, engagement starts when students, beyond the school hours are supported by their parents also to read, to be curious. You mentioned, curiosity. I want to find out more. Education is all over the place. Learning takes place everywhere. And if I have a space at home also where, there is this kind of wonder about, what can that be about, discussion, talking, conversations, and doing mathematics, also those basic skills, and establishing habits, that need to be established, because children, they love, rituals. They really find within, with a structure, they learn to navigate life, and the structure gives them security and safety. And I just would like to mention one example here. We have established an Italian home where students, on top of being online, they meet offline for, learning weeks. We call them kind of offline learning weeks. Maybe we could call them boot camps, because it's a full immersion into something specific. That can be English literature, it can be mathematics, it can be science, and so forth. And the last week was around mathematics, and with a structure, clear structure for the day. And the students who were there, they really said they enjoyed it so much. It was very intense, but the structure helped them to navigate this intensity. And then there was engagement. You mentioned the engagement, and you sit around the table and you see that everyone is the same engaged. And that's something, if I'm doing this also at home, where I engage as a mother, as a father, in the learning, in the curiosity, in the questions, in the skills that, of course, a human being needs to learn. If we do that, then we encourage this to happen. And then engagement is actually a learned skill. Not everyone will engage the same. Not everyone will engage with 10 people at the same time. Maybe they prefer to engage with just 2-3 people at the same time, or they say, I would like to start alone, but then I bring it back, to the team, and then still we co-create together. That's something that we can learn by still acknowledging the diversity of different personalities, because of course not everyone can be treated the same way. But engagement is a learned skill, and that can be encouraged. You mentioned also about like-minded people. And if there is like-minded people and everyone sees the value of engagement, the value of co-creation, the value of discipline also, because it's also about discipline. And that's why a framework, a structure is helping, because it helps me keeping on track. and being focused and not just shifting constantly and always just going with the impulsive emotional impulse that says, no, now I'm not ready to do that because I want to lie down instead. But that's where mindset comes in, and structure comes in without pressurizing, but with clarity rather than pressurizing. And that's where parents play an important role uh, in in our view, as mentioned before, a very important role. And it's beautiful when it's working. When it's working, magic indeed can happen. And to give another example, we just had an 11 years old student who has created an SBL mascot, that designed it, created it, and now opening a kind of, not a kind of, an enterprise around this, which is great, and this is engagement again. There was an idea, the idea was taken on board. Parents also helped a lot, to make it happen. And then things just unfold. And that's the beauty of it. So I think it's really, we need to think in terms of education is the most powerful instrument to shape oneself and to shape society. And that's why SBL really, we work so wholeheartedly on that, because we believe that our young people, all these young people, they all have a mission within. And by working together with parents who are there, who make time, of course, and who take the students, their child, who guide their child at home also, and invite their child to contribute, and to be an active member rather than a passive member, not intaking, but rather exploring, exploiting, and then the space opens more and more.
And, as we were talking about parents and engagements and family cultures, I just wanted to share a story. Recently, I was talking to one of my cousins, and they had a newborn. No, not newborn. She's about a year old now. So she's just about a year old, or a little older. And whenever she's at home in the city, oftentimes just to keep her engaged, maybe they would, turn on the television, or there would be the mobile phone, right? So that she would eat, or at least when the parents are not always around, sometimes when they're like, people go to the restroom, or going or walking around, she just, gets a bit impatient, and because she needs that constant attention. Now she's that a little older. Recently, they went to their in a hometown, and then they have so many people coming over. And he was just saying that what he noticed is now when he was there, when he would cook, or the mother would talk to someone, or speak to someone, or clean something, or do something, instead of the television or instead of the screens, she would notice it and she would try to imitate that, right? And this used to happen a lot more when we did not have devices. We would imitate it, like literally everything that our parents or the people around us would do. And this is a great way to learn, because you're not only imitating the person, but you're also learning through, the basic things in life. And, if let's say a 7-year-old or 8-year-old is at home, and he or she is learning something or doing something, why does it have to be, a separate thing? Why not, when the parents are engaged into something, they take in the child with them. Maybe the child do not get a chance to do it, but they can at least get a chance to see and learn it and how it works. It doesn't always have to be the parents have to find a separate time for the child, and only for the child to do something. It can also be within their working period, when they're doing something, they engage and they involve the child into the practice, so that that gets learned. And we at SBL do practice visual learning. Visual learning is a big aspect of learning, about how we learn. We listen to people, and then we get to also express ourselves and share our thoughts, and what we want. And this is the combination of all these three ways of learning is very vital. At traditional schools, it's mostly you're, you know, taking in and giving out. It's not about always listening properly or not creating something. You just gave the example of mascot. For sure, this idea was, as you said, supported by parents, not only through financial means. I mean, of course, it's important, but I think also that, this could be something for her and this would be accepted. The validation was there, which made it a lot more engaging and fun for her. And this is exactly it. You have to find meaning behind what you do. She knew that it was going to be sold, and that was her idea, right? Like she's creating an enterprise, and this idea gets sparked even more if there are people, fueling the idea. So it's always important that we keep fueling whatever idea there is, because the moment we turn away, or children can even sense things. Sometimes we don't show that much of a motivation for things, even if we say it. So it doesn't always have to be this way if they're always engaged into things. And that makes it much more curious for them and engaging.
Yeah, I like your example, that you brought, and this kind of separation is actually not needed in education at all. Us children are imitating us, right? I mean, we need to involve the children in everyday's life. And if we look at societies where children are still very close to their mothers, and they are just the mothers take them with them and with domestic tasks and other tasks. And I think that's very important. It's not that I need to schedule my entire day around the child. Maybe we have gone, not maybe, for sure, in certain societies, we have gone towards scheduling each hour for our children. So first there's school, then we can tick that off, and then there is the piano lesson, and then there's the sports, and then there is all of that. And I'm not saying that this is completely wrong, don't get me wrong, of course not, but it's not just, it's about blending these things. It's about understanding a child needs to be involved in what is happening at home, needs to be involved in, setting the table, in cleaning and tidying up, and tidying up their own rooms and so forth. And if this is just the, part of the daily life and part of what family expects them to do, or agrees to do together, then children would do that, because they imitate their parents, they imitate teachers, they imitate then later on friends. And that's the power of, if we know that, then we know how to establish a nourishing environment of education where children can really indeed, just develop their way of expressing themselves within society.
And and according to my observations, I don't know, but I observed it that it helps them become more aware of their surroundings because they're noticing even the silliest and the littlest things. When as you said, when it's younger child, they tend to spend more time with their mothers. So the way their mothers would dress, or that she would move her hands, the way she would sit, or even sometimes fathers, the way they'd walk and talk, they the more they spend time with them, the more they grasp those things, right? And this is very important. The way, the mother or the father would clean the table gets noticed, and later on she tries to imitate, and it subconsciously gets set into their mind. So the way we kind of lead our lives, it does influence our child and our children. So it's very important that we as parents, instead of parents or instead of anyone just saying, that is our role model, or this should be your role model. We should go to school and rely on school, because the children spends very like most of the time with their parents, and then later in school. It's very important that we all try to become the best for ourselves and also for the people who we are, spending or sharing our society with. So it's very important that we all try to become our best, because it's not about us only, it's about everyone, including.
Absolutely. And I really believe this is the core message today, how important education is, how important it is to work together, how important it is to role model, as you say, what we think is important for our children to get security by, because it's all about feeling safe within. If I don't feel safe anymore, then I'm not ready to move forward, to risk a little bit, because life is about, adventure and also having security. And I can go into the adventurous part if I feel safe within myself and if I know that my surrounding will support me and I feel safe within my environment too. So education is the most important instrument that we have. So thank you, Nayeef, for another interesting conversation.
Thank you very much.
At School Beyond Limitations, we support our students find their unique essence. Feel free to share the content of this podcast with other parents. We are here to show that your children can, indeed, bring their unique essence into life. So, reach out to us if you think that this is what you'd like your daughter, your son to experience, or apply through our website. Also, leave your comments, your questions, or your review about the podcast. Share it with others. And, as you know, sharing is caring. Trust and you can see.